XDC senior software engineer, the one and only Quincy Jones, pointed out a while back in an exclusive interview about a huge problem that most people aren't aware of when it comes to BTC. Now, hear me out. It's not what you're thinking. It's not the whole thing of 2 to 7 TPS. Has nothing to do with that. It's another underlying huge problem that needs to be addressed. With this problem, would it create incredible supply and demand forces for your likes of, hear me out, BSV, kaspa, and how about this for size? Iota. Yeah, these are ones that, let's face it, maybe you own one of the three, maybe you don't own any. I own all three. I want to get into why this is important. On top of that, I created a video, doesn't have my voice on it, but it's educational. And if anything, if you're a researcher or just a person that likes to share cool content with visuals, you're more than welcome to share that video. So before we get into the material, do me a favor, check out the Decent wallet. Believe it or not, you can get a discount. You got to go through platforms like myself to get that significant discount. So here's Decent wallet, and we'll jump right back. If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. So just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure. All right, as promised, welcome back. Quincy Jones, his interview. Let's tie in everything. Here we go.
This is something people need to take into consideration when they look at proof of work systems, because this is sort of where I came down the rabbit hole of this problem, and I was sort of like dumbfounded that you could mine Bitcoin back in 2010, no problem, made a couple Bitcoin and be incredibly wealthy right now. But if you wanted to mine Bitcoin right now, you would need a ever increasingly larger and larger processing unit to do so. And it just asked me the question of, well, at what point does it stop scaling upward and it levels off to be able to, like, you know, plateau to be able to run a network? So I kind of just, I wouldn't even say like crunch the numbers. I kind of just did some basic math, sort of equating the amount of power used to scale it from where it was in 2019 in the hash power to where it is now and the amount of power growth. And if you do that it follows an exponential curve. Like, you could plot the curve out perfectly. And if you keep doing that outward, by the time you get somewhere between 5 and 10%, you don't have enough power on the planet to maintain the amount of power that needs to go into the system to execute the Bitcoin network. And people like to make this excuse that, like, oh, well, all these other systems are all incredibly energy intensive. Also, what makes Bitcoin so wrong? And it's not that Bitcoin uses a ton of energy, which is a problem. It is that Bitcoin energy scaling problem that gets exponentially worse the more people that are on the network. And it's one of those things too. There's a few things that come with that, but the main point is that. And then you can kind of go into speculating of, well, what would happen if it wasn't, you know, if it wasn't economically viable to run on the network anymore, or what would happen if there was a consolidation event and, you know, one node ran a 51% attack because it's not economically viable and people left. Like, there's so many different avenues that you can go down that's based off this one fundamental problem. And it only gets worse too if you get into like the tether thing, because if you pull liquidity from the network and the value drops. One thing I also stated before too is there's a hypothetical value out there that the miners needed to be able to continue mining Bitcoin profitably, or nobody will be able to. So there are a few, and this all comes down to the scaling problem. It really does come down to the overall energy scaling problem that create all these other bubble problems out from it. And there is no, like, people like to say that there's a solution in the Lightning Network and some other stuff too. And it's one of those things where yeah, the best way I could describe it is, imagine like having your uncle, right? And he's got his like old like Chevy truck from the 80s that he loves so much. And he's like, look, like, whatever you have to say about it, we could just make it new. We could update it. And you know to yourself, no, there's no amount of anything you can put on that truck that's going to make it run like a new Prius. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you could put a Prius engine in there and it'll still run like a freaking truck. Like, and that's essentially where Bitcoin is. Bitcoin's in a position where the fundamental architecture of how it was built out, and it's kind of funny too, because I actually have my own suspicions that whoever built Bitcoin knew this problem, and I think they launched it out there because they have a better system already.
You mustn't let these minor disruptions ruin your appetite.
Essentially, with the way that we're doing things now with Terranode, you don't have to worry about running a node. And that was always in the white paper, Section 8, with simplified payment verification. But what we've done is we've allowed these secondary layers to start to take shape. And it's not the same as like the Lightning Network, where you have a completely separate system. What we're allowing for are what are called overlays. And so essentially what an overlay is it's kind of like a sub network that uses the same underlying network that everything else runs on. So that's, for example, the UTXOs. An overlay network is still going to be using UTXOs, but you can start to build templates with your transactions and use those UTXOs in a unique way. And so you can have a customer base or integrate that into your application, and then your customers are interacting with you directly, which also aids scalability because you're not having to interact directly with the blockchain. Even things like SLAs, that gives you an advantage there. You can deal with that in your own subnet versus having to rely on a large blockchain, which as you scale, it definitely becomes untenable. Even 1 million transactions per second is getting up there.
If you wanted to say Satoshi Nakamoto was so smart to create the Bitcoin network, you can honestly, like, you can't say that he wasn't smart enough to realize the scaling problem in the math of the system he created.
There's nothing wrong with the food, it's the company.
Like, you could write out the problem on the math of a napkin and find out how much power it would take over so many people using the network, solely based off the amount of people that use the network the first year and how the hash rate changed. Like, it's kind of crazy that people don't talk about it, but I think it is one of those things where I think if people talked about it, it could actually cause people to panic, because it's one of those things where most people aren't really accustomed to the math of it, but it doesn't take a genius to realize that something can be mathematically improbable. And it's very easy to tell that it's mathematically improbable, even though you may not know the technical, algebraic formulation that causes that improbability. And I think that's why people don't talk about it, because I think people are genuinely scared that that may be the case. And you may call me wrong, whatever, but that doesn't change the fact that if that is the case, there's a huge problem with proof of work systems as a whole. And it's something, like I said, people don't talk about it, but it's an inevitability. And one thing that you actually see now is you'll actually see a strain on the electrical infrastructure before you saw that problem of us not having enough power to run the Bitcoin network. You'll see them short out their local electrical infrastructure way before you see there not being enough power to run the Bitcoin network, because it's so power intensive.
Crypto is a complete sideshow, okay? And you guys spend too much time on it, and I've made my views perfectly clear about crypto tokens are like pet rocks. And there's and people hyping this stuff up.
Hello, you okay, buddy? Okay.
Here's that quick video that I made, and then there'll be another one shortly after the next segment with Quincy Jones. Here we go.
Quincy Jones points out that a strain on the electrical infrastructure means that there is not enough power to run the BTC network because it is so power intensive. Is there a solution currently speaking? If so, what network? The BTC network's high energy consumption has indeed been a point of contention, particularly due to its impact on electrical infrastructure. Here are several solutions or approaches currently being discussed or implemented. Demand response programs. Some BTC miners participate in demand response programs where they agree to reduce their electricity consumption during peak load times on the grid. This can help stabilize the grid by providing a flexible load that can be curtailed when electricity demand is high. Posts found on X have highlighted that BTC miners can reduce electricity consumption by significant percentages during peak periods, aiding grid stability. Relocation to renewable energy sources. Miners are increasingly moving operations to areas with abundant renewable energy sources, like hydro, wind, or solar power. This not only reduces the carbon footprint, but can also be economically beneficial due to lower energy costs. For example, some regions in the US have seen miners relocating to areas with high renewable energy availability, thus reducing the strain on non-renewable sources. Stranded energy utilization. BTC mining can utilize stranded energy, which is energy produced but not used due to inefficiencies or location issues in the energy grid. By setting up mining operations near these sources, miners can monetize otherwise wasted energy, potentially leading to broader economic benefits for local communities. This approach is seen in scenarios where surplus hydroelectric power or flared gas from oil operations is used for mining. Technological improvements in mining. Hardware. Advancements in mining hardware. Efficiency mean that newer ASICs consume less power for the same amount of hash rate. While this doesn't reduce the network's overall energy consumption directly, it can lead to more efficient mining operations, allowing miners to do more with less energy. Regulatory and market incentives. Some suggest that regulatory frameworks could incentivize or even mandate more sustainable practices in mining, such as using green energy or participating in grid stability programs. Market forces might also push miners towards greener solutions, as public and investor sentiment increasingly values sustainability. These solutions, however, come with their own set of challenges, including economic feasibility, scalability, and acceptance by the BTC community, which values the security and decentralization provided by proof of work. No single solution currently addresses all concerns comprehensively, but a combination of these approaches could mitigate the strain.
There is a fundamental problem with proof of work that that breaks all of this into everything. And the problem is it's in proof of work. So what ends up happening is you have all these nodes competing for the Bitcoin by being able to crack the hash. Well, one cracks the hash, gets the Bitcoin, and the rest of them just completely wasted whatever electricity they had. And there's no amount of extra network that you could put onto this that would basically eliminate all that extra wasted energy from all the nodes that essentially didn't do anything other than compete to try to basically crack the hash. And unless you wanted to rewrite the Bitcoin code to be something else, there's no real, like I said, it's like the Chevy. It's like, well, what if we change the Chevy to not be a Chevy anymore? Well, then it's not a Chevy anymore.
Have you ever thought about how much energy goes into mining cryptocurrencies? If you're like most people, you probably associate BTC with the massive energy consumption that comes from its proof-of-work system. And while there's been a lot of chatter about alternatives, one name that keeps popping up is kaspa. So, what's the deal with kaspa? And why could it be a game changer in the conversation about sustainable proof of work? First off, let's talk about what makes kaspa stand out. You see, kaspa uses something called a block DAG protocol. Now, I know that sounds a bit technical, but stick with me. Unlike traditional blockchain systems, where only one miner gets to add a block at a time, kaspa allows for multiple blocks to be mined simultaneously. Imagine a busy highway, where cars can zoom in and out freely, instead of just one lane moving at a snail's pace. This approach can potentially reduce the energy inefficiency we see in traditional mining by making the process less competitive and more inclusive. Now, why does that matter? Well, the more efficient the mining process, the less energy is wasted. And given how much energy BTC and other proof-of-work systems consume, this is a big deal. Kaspa's structure could mean that energy use is distributed more evenly across the network. which might help to lower the overall energy cost per transaction. This is huge when you consider the environmental impact of crypto mining. Speaking of transactions, let's touch on scalability. Kaspa boasts high transaction throughput, which means it can handle a lot of transactions without needing to crank up the energy consumption. Think of it like a restaurant that can serve more customers without needing to hire more staff or use more resources. In contrast, traditional POW systems like BTC can get bogged down when the network gets busy, leading to delays and higher fees. Kaspa aims to tackle this problem head-on, making it a more energy-efficient choice compared to its older counterparts. Now, let's not forget the community aspect. If you've browsed social media, especially platforms like X, you'll see a lot of enthusiastic chatter about kaspa. Many in the community believe in its potential to be more energy efficient due to its innovative approach. But here's the catch. While community sentiment is important, we have to approach it with a critical eye. Just because people are excited doesn't mean it's a silver bullet for sustainability. It's essential to balance optimism with a healthy dose of skepticism. Now let's briefly compare kaspa to another player in the proof-of-work game, Bitcoin SV, or BSV for short. BSV claims to be scalable with larger block sizes, which theoretically could make transactions more energy efficient on a per-transaction basis. But here's the kicker. It still relies on the same energy-intensive POW mechanism as BTC. So while it might have some claims of efficiency with what it does with Terranode, it doesn't really tackle the core issue of energy waste in mining. It's like trying to make a gas-guzzling car more fuel-efficient by just putting in a bigger gas tank. It doesn't really solve the problem. And what about alternatives to proof-of-work altogether? Well, we have systems like proof-of-stake, which Ethereum has transitioned to after its big merge. Proof-of-stake avoids the energy consumption problem of proof-of-work entirely. But if we're focusing specifically on proof-of-work alternatives, we can't overlook iota. Iota uses a directed acyclic graph structure called Tangle, which doesn't rely on traditional mining. Instead, every time you make a transaction, you confirm 2 previous transactions. This creates a self-sustaining network without the energy-intensive mining we see in proof-of-work systems. So why might DAG-based systems like iota represent a more direct path to sustainability compared to kaspa or BSV? For starters, they are fundamentally different in how they operate. Since iota doesn't require traditional mining, it sidesteps the energy consumption issue right from the get-go. It's like skipping the long line at a theme park and heading straight for the rides. Moreover, DAG systems can potentially scale better. With iota, as more transactions occur, the network's security and processing capacity can increase without a corresponding rise in energy consumption. This is a stark contrast to proof-of-work systems, where scaling often leads to more energy use or even centralization as miners compete for rewards. Plus, let's not underestimate the accessibility factor. With DAG systems, there's no need for expensive mining hardware or high electricity costs. This lowers the barriers to entry, allowing more participants to join the network, which can enhance decentralization and security without the energy overhead that comes with traditional mining. And then there's the environmental impact. By removing the need for mining, the carbon footprint of these networks shrinks significantly. This is particularly crucial as we grapple with climate change and the need for sustainable practices across all sectors, including tech. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. DAG systems like iota face challenges particularly around security. The security model is different from what we're used to with traditional proof of work, and it needs to prove its resilience in real-world scenarios. Plus, transitioning to a new system requires significant changes in how transactions are processed, which can lead to resistance from established players in the crypto space. In summary, while kaspa is certainly an innovative alternative within the proof-of-work framework, pushing the boundaries of energy efficiency, it still operates within the energy-intensive proof-of-work paradigm. On the other hand, DAG-based systems like iota offer a more direct path to sustainability by fundamentally changing the consensus mechanism. As we continue to explore the future of cryptocurrencies, it's essential to weigh these options carefully, considering both their potential and the challenges they face. The quest for a sustainable crypto future is just beginning, and it's a conversation worth having.
All right, so there you have it. Let me know what you think in regards to the material that was presented. Will this create incredible supply and demand forces, not just for your BSV, your kaspa, but what about iota? Not enough mention in regards to iota. And like I mentioned, I hold all three of these particular ones. Heck, even XDC is mentioned at the beginning of the video. So my key takeaway is, again, not financial advice, I own all of these. And if anything, do you own one of the four? Share what you have in the comments. And type in this keyword if you stuck around to the end of the outline, and simply type this Quincy, and I'll know that you listened to the entire outline. Thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD, 110%. We will see you on the next one. Hey guys, I just want to point out something real quick in regards to Uphold with you guys. A lot of you guys are familiar with Uphold or heard about it, but if you're brand new to all this and don't have an account, basically there's some benefits. It benefits me, it benefits you. This is a win-win. But one thing I want to point out to really pound it home with Uphold is, for example, XDC. As we know, with XDC, a lot of us have to jump through the hoops of like KuCoin, use a VPN to kind of get around things. This is American-based exchange with Uphold. You don't have to do that. You can get your XDC here, and yeah, not having to deal with that is a great thing. You could also get XRP here. Again, American-based exchange. There's a refer and earn. Bottom line is, if you deposit $100, I get 20, you get 20. It's a win-win for both of us. And of course, that's in BTC, but again, you can swap that to any of these particular altcoins. So check it out. Links are in the description if you would like to take advantage of the 20. And yeah, a win for both of us. How cool is that? Links in the description, both on the live and on the recorded. Thanks, guys. Over and out.